Hi, I'm Julie Novkov of Rockefeller College, and I'm recording this tonight just after the confirmation of Amy Coney Barrett to serve as an Associate Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court. Many people have talked about how rapid her vetting and confirmation were. She was nominated just a month ago, and the average time from nomination to confirmation is about 67 days. The shortest in modern history was John Paul Stevens, who was confirmed in 19 days in 1975. Sandra Day O'Connor is the next closest at just over a month. But in both of these cases, the justices were confirmed with no nay votes. Democrats, of course, are stewing over the Senate's refusal to consider Merrick Garland, who was nominated by Barack Obama in March of 2016 and never received consideration by the Senate in an election year. The claim, of course, was that Obama should not have had the authority to put a person on the court during an election year. Now that the shoe is on the other foot, the Republicans in the Senate, in collaboration with Donald Trump, have placed Barrett on the court at a point very close to the election. What are the implications of our new Associate Justice? There was a conservative majority on the court before her confirmation. Chief Justice Roberts and Justices Gorsuch and Kavanaugh are all conservatives, and they are joined by very conservative Justices Alito and Thomas. The liberal wing on the court is now diminished to but 3 justices: Justice Breyer, Justice Kagan, and Justice Sotomayor. In the last few years, several cases have gone 5-4 and have tipped in conservative directions on major issues. We think, of course, of Citizens United, which struck down campaign finance limitations; Shelby County, which struck down parts of the Voting Rights Act; the Janus case, which limited the capacity of unions to continue to organize as effectively. Just this term, in Rucco versus Common Cause, partisan gerrymandering was ruled to be non-justiciable by the court. The court has also placed limits on class action lawsuits for injuries and for discrimination. And this term, the court also ruled that non-citizens with criminal records can be detained largely at will. A few rulings have gone in more liberal directions. We think of Whole Woman's Health, which preserved the idea of undue burden as the standard in abortion cases and struck down a very stringent abortion regulation. Limits were placed on Trump's attempts to claim immunity in legal proceedings. The court rode to the rescue of DACA. We have no citizenship question on the census. And Justice Roberts joined the liberals on the court to uphold Obamacare about 5 years ago. And this term, an even larger majority ruled in favor of applying Title VII anti-discrimination principles to LGBT individuals in the workplace. So you might be asking yourself, what difference will it make to add a 6th conservative vote on the court? The most important impact is that this will create fewer degrees of freedom for Chief Justice Roberts. He is much more likely now to side with a conservative majority, because whenever he is in the majority, he has the authority to control the assignment of the majority opinion, thereby shaping the direction that it will take. Barrett will obviously play a crucial role on the court in ongoing and upcoming election litigation, and Barrett is, of course, a potential ally to Donald Trump in his various legal proceedings. What are the political consequences? Well, at first blush, it seems like a major political victory for the Republican Party and for cultural conservatives. We likely will now see enough votes on the court either to overturn Roe versus Wade outright or to reduce it to jurisprudential meaninglessness through a vast expansion of the undue burden standard and the idea that very, very few regulations will be adjudicated by the court to constitute an undue burden on abortion. There are now enough votes to bolster free exercise of religion principles dramatically, which may allow many exemptions for conservative Christian beliefs, when they collide with anti-discrimination imperatives. The court now also has enough votes to bolster emerging establishment clause jurisprudence that will allow for more state expenditures to support religion. The addition of Barrett is a very bad outcome for those who are seeking to expand voting rights and voting access. It's a bad outcome for those who want to see more limits on money in politics. And it's a very bad outcome for those who want to see an immigration system that has any type of legal oversight or basic accountability to human rights standards. However, it may turn out that this move on the part of the Trump administration and the Republican Party will constitute a dramatic political overreach and miscalculation. Up until very recently, there's been a strong belief in the legitimacy of the federal court system and in the legitimacy of the Supreme Court in particular. It takes a lot for Americans to be shaken off of that belief about the court's legitimacy. When Bush versus Gore was decided in the year 2000, many court scholars believed that this was a terrible self-inflicted wound on the part of the court and that the court was going to find itself in trouble. But within about 6 months, the political attitudes toward the court had basically reestablished themselves, and people saw the court as a legitimate institution again. That may not be as true in this circumstance when we have the addition of a 6th conservative justice who goes pretty far away from the beliefs of the majority of the people, especially in an environment that has been so bitterly politicized on both sides. One piece of evidence suggesting that this may be the case is that the Supreme Court emerged as an activating campaign issue in 2016 for Republicans. This year, there's some evidence that it is serving as an activating campaign issue for Democrats. This is a highly unusual phenomenon in American elections and suggests that people are really paying attention to the court and thinking about the court and its political status and its political implications. This may have raised an appetite for wholesale reform. There have already been a number of options placed on the table by Democrats anticipating a big win next Tuesday. They've discussed changing the number of justices who sit on the US Supreme Court, establishing term limits for justices on the court, and possibly even stripping the court's jurisdiction or its ability to hear certain kinds of cases. However, this moment has also brought attention to the lower federal courts and problems in the circuit system that could spark some interest in a major reorganization. Ultimately, all of these developments could, if the Democrats win big in the election, generate significant energy for reorganization of the federal court system. Scholars who've been talking about this will sometimes talk about the early 1800s, but to my mind, the most salient comparison is probably more the Civil War Reconstruction era changes that took place in the federal courts. At that time, we saw a major expansion and reorganization of the circuit court system, with many new judgeships created, and those appointments, of course, going to Republican judges, as the Republican Party was at that time in control. The Republicans also acted to limit the Supreme Court's jurisdiction over certain kinds of cases, and the court itself found itself in a weakened position due to its highly unpopular stances with regard to slavery prior to the Civil War, which of course was itself such a divisive issue that it had a large role in causing the Civil War. So if you are sitting there tonight and feeling like the successful confirmation of Amy Coney Barrett is going to basically destroy the court and render it illegitimate, the game is not necessarily up for the Democrats. There may be some major changes coming forward, and there may be the political will to put these changes through in light of this nomination and confirmation. So the question, of course, on everyone's mind will be, what is going to happen with the courts? A lot will depend on the outcome of the election. It would take a significant Democratic victory for any of the changes that I've described to take place. But it will also depend on what happens with the three justices on the court that are closest to the middle right now. And those justices are Justice Roberts, Justice Kavanaugh, and Justice Gorsuch. You might be thinking, well, Kavanaugh and Gorsuch were nominated by Trump. Roberts is a conservative, also nominated by a Republican president. But the court itself, we have to remember, is well aware of its status as an independent institution. So I wouldn't go too far out on any limb predicting what the justices might do if they are confronting serious questions that might ultimately affect the outcome of the election. So at this point, we will just have to wait and see what is going to happen next.